Coming out. My name is John Kirk. I'm a comics and television journalist and writer for popmythology.com, trekcore.com, and Back Issue magazine. And I have the truly enjoyable task to welcome John Wesley Shipp to this Q&A panel at Toronto Comic Con. John is well known for his prolific role as Barry Allen in the 1990s version of The Flash, and then to reprise his involvement with that show as Henry Allen and Jay Garrick in the CW's version of The Flash. So if you could please join me in putting your hands together and extending a warm Toronto Comic Con welcome to John Wesley Shipp. Please.
Wow, I just brought my camera phone. I want a picture of you guys. Woo! Wow. Incredible energy in here this morning.
This is a full house. You've got a lot of people to come and see you.
Yeah. Amazing. Boy, I hope I don't disappoint. I gotta pull something out of my hat really quick here. I wasn't prepared.
Well, I think that's probably going to be my fault because I didn't prepare you well. So I want to start by looking at your background. Now, your father did a pretty heroic thing when you were growing up, if I remember correctly, in integrating the community. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was interesting times in North Carolina in the late 60s. There was a time far, far away, long ago. It was called 1969. And I was a sophomore in high school, my sister, and the community in North Carolina had just been partially racially integrated. And so the school had been, and so my sister and I, my father's a minister, we would have a Christmas party every year. And so, of course, since we were interfacing with people of different races, suddenly in the South, some of our friends were African American, so our Christmas party guest list, mind you, it's a sophomore in high school and a senior in high school, and a junior in high school, my sister and I, included some African Americans. So yeah, you know, no problem. But the deacons at the church that my father was pastoring outside of Wake Forest, North Carolina, had a big problem with it, and they wanted him to call off the party. And he said, I can't tell my children, teach my children that everyone is created equal in the love of God, but some of their friends aren't welcome in our home because of the color of their skin. So we ended up getting a shotgun blast through our house, about 18 bullets through our house during the party at head and chest level through the front picture window. And it was Saturday. Next morning, my dad was fired from the church, and we were told to be out of the community. This is a real downer, I'm really sorry. I was told to be out of the community at sundown. But, you know, now, that was then. And it was a pretty difficult time, and the FBI investigated, the governor offered a reward, nothing was there. My father went on to have a 30-some-year multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-denominational ministry. 30 years later, I'm in North Carolina filming Dawson's Creek. Oh, yeah. And the schools in Wake Forest now have been totally integrated, and the story of what happened back in that day became something of a bit of like an urban legend. So I was invited by the president of the class to come to graduation and be the keynote speaker and tell that story, and then give a charge to the class about, you know, love and inclusion. Hi, it's so good to see you guys here. I'm so glad you're here. Love and inclusion and you know, moving through tolerance to appreciation of our differences. And then the next day, that was a Saturday, I had 2,500 people, Raleigh Memorial Auditorium. I gave this speech, not knowing how people would react. Incredible experience. Next day, my father was invited to the First Baptist Church there in Wake Forest, and it's like the rafters were packed, and he talked about his ministry going forward. At the end, long story short, they call my family down to the front of the church. They offer a public apology, and they give my mom the key to the city.
Oh, wow.
Well, I bring that up because that's such a legacy of heroism. And I mean, that's kind of what you done with the Flash is that you've been the Flash in one generation, and now you're part of the second generation of that, and that's just a really cool thing. But did that ever have an influence on your acting?
Oh, yes, anything like that. You know, they say sometimes, and I think this is across the board for everyone, and in fact, I included this in my charge to the class. Sometimes what you think is the worst thing that could possibly happen to you ends up yielding pure gold. You know, some of your darkest experiences turn out to be the greatest resource that you have, because it connects you with other people at a very vulnerable level. It tests your mettle, and then it makes you really grateful for the good stuff when it comes.
You're just such a hyper-positive source of energy. You're just nice. But how did you transition from the 1990s Flash to the 21st century? How did that happen?
It was amazing. Nothing I ever expected. I always tell people, you know, it was the last scene that we shot at the 1991 show. It was me and Mark Hamill, like 5 a.m. in someplace in southeast Los Angeles, and I'm in the Flash suit, and they yell cut on the final scene, and I rip the wings off and throw them in the air. And Mark Hamill almost lost his mind. Because he's a big comic book collector, so he was like, "Where are those? Don't let them get away!" And he was climbing on garbage. He got those wings, and he still has them to this day. I can't think of anybody I would rather have those wings. Yeah, man, I swore at that moment that I would never get in another superhero costume. Never again. Never say never. But there have been, they kind of did a bait and switch on me, right? Because Jeff Johns sort of reimagined the entire Allen family. Emmett Walsh, the great Emmett Walsh, played my dad. Priscilla Pointer, who was also Amy Irving's mother, she played my mother. Well, Emmett Walsh was not wrongfully convicted of killing Priscilla Pointer in front of a 10-year-old me. You know, that wasn't our origin story. So when I read that that's how Jeff Johns had reimagined it, and people said, "Are you going to be part of the new project?" And I said, "Well, if they come to me, that's the role I would want." And then that's the role they offered, and everyone said, "Jake Garrick, Jake Garrick, Jake Garrick," and I was like, I would not have been as enthusiastic 24 years later going back right away into another superhero suit. It was hard enough going through, you know, Henry, you want me to do what? You know, but to go in as the father, having played the role, Grant knew I had played the role. I kind of had a hint of what his hopes and dreams going into an iconic role like that are, and some of his insecurities. And it just meshed, I think. Don't you agree? Mm-hmm. We've talked about this online, and these ladies right here who are so supportive of the Flash community. Stand up. I want to thank you for what was I saying? Oh yeah. And I've lost it. I've totally lost my train of thought.
Coming back as
coming back as Jake Garrick, yes. And Henry, yeah, that it would carve out a special place for Grant and I. Because the way the scenes were written, it was adventure, adventure, excitement, you know, music, lights, action, wonderful CGI effects, you know. And then everything would stop, you'd see Iron Heights, the lights would go down, and we'd walk into that phone booth and pick up those phones, and it was just him and me. And I figured that would carve out a very special place, and a very special way without it being on the nose. You know, here's the baton, kid, go get him. You know, to hand off the project and to support the next generation. You know, Mark Hamill had just come from Star Wars when he was doing the Trickster episode. He and I were riding back to the hotel one night, and he said, what a unique opportunity it is to come back a quarter of a century later and participate, not in a token way, but in a meaningful way in handing off the project to the next generation. So, you know, people asked me about those scenes, and I said, you know, we just memorized the lines, and we showed up and looked at each other, and there was so much of our background that was done for us. You know, a couple of Norfolk, Virginia boys were both from the same town. He went to the same high school as my mother. He was born, we're born in the same month, 8 days apart, and he was born the year I was doing The Flash. So he used that to psych himself up during the audition process. So a lot of our background was done for us. So that part was easy. I tell people I would have wanted to play Henry Allen even if I had never played Barry. Having played Barry helped me to play Henry better because I had the history and I had the background. And I just, you know, and it helped an awful lot because I'm so fond of him. People ask me, what is Grant Gustin like? Right? Right? And I say, these ladies know what he's like. What you see is what you get, and the humanity that is so important for the character of Barry Allen, specifically among superheroes. You know, that guy who wants to do the right thing. You know? I always say his heart's in the right place and his head is just trying to catch up. You know? But